Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening to you, depending on where on the planet you happen to be. I'm Megan Jones from ICEAA, welcoming you to the latest of our ICEAA OEM COG presentations. We're going to have a pretty busy schedule today. We've got four panelists going to be discussing the generational differences and how we can approach them in the workplace. So we may not have too much time to get to questions, but if you do have a question or you need some technical assistance, go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll be on top of that today. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Hewitt, who will get us started. Kevin.
I was the dreaded double mute got me.
That happens.
I apologize for that. Thank you very much, Megan, and thank you all for your patience with this technical difficulty. But welcome to today's webinar. This is brought to you by the ICEAA OEM COG, and many of you out there today know what that is. For any first timers today, the ICEAA formed the OEM COG to address the fact that original equipment manufacturers within our cost community, they obviously they face challenges that are different from the government or other private sector organizations within ICEAA. And our group, which stands for the Original Equipment Manufacturers Collaborative Opportunities Group, was formed to address those challenges and to create a dialogue between ICEAA and the other OEM members, as well as each other, and form a forum where we can explore ways that we can lift each other up, because at the end of the day, a rising tide raises all ships. And one of the ways that we do that is by hosting periodic webinars, such as the one here today on building generational gaps. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce the facilitator for today's panel. Brett Johnston is a Lockheed Martin Fellow and Production Air Vehicle Cost Estimator at Lockheed Martin Aeronautics Company in Fort Worth, Texas. He has 37 years experience in the military aircraft industry, including 34 years as a cost estimator. He has worked F-16 as well as the advanced development programs, and has been for 27 years the lead manufacturing cost estimator for the F-35 program. He has a Master of Science from Texas A&M University and a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Texas at Austin. Without further ado, Brent, take her off.
All right. Thank you very much, Kevin. All right. I'd like to start by introducing our panelists today. We have four of them from across the industries. I'll start with Samantha Bailey, who is a production operations estimator at Lockheed Martin Aeronautics in Fort Worth. She has 10 years professional work experience in data analysis, project and subcontract management, and education, including 5 years in estimating. She's worked a variety of F-35 program efforts with estimates involving manufacturing, tooling, quality, and engineering. It's required her to develop her skills in cost estimating relationships, learning curve analysis, and data modeling. She's also been involved in multiple digital transformation efforts with tools like Alteryx, Tableau, Power Queries, and Access. She has a Bachelor of Arts in Mathematics with a minor in English from the University of Texas at Arlington. Okay, second panelist today is Michael Finnegan, who works for the Boeing Company in El Segundo, California. He has a master's degree in mathematics from Missouri State University. When he hired in at Boeing in St. Louis, he joined the Business Skills Rotation Program, and his first rotation was in labor estimating and pricing. His second rotation, he moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for a second rotation in procurement financial analysis. Also had to go at in integrated scheduling. I'll quote directly from his bio. He said, roughly 5 years into his career, he had a midlife crisis due not to wanting to settle down at the old age of 28. His mentor found him a role in the Satellites Estimating and Pricing organization in El Segundo, where he currently works as a parametric cost estimator, building cost models, satellite proposals, and doing independent cost analysis. Our third panelist is Jacqueline Magisterio from BAE Systems. Her bio notes that she has many years of finance under her belt. She fell into pricing, her exact words, based on a career change. Also, quote, she says, with a love of numbers, finance was always a fantastic place, but can get mundane, so this led me to pricing, which never gets boring. She's had the opportunity to work on the legacy, MIDS, and NTC DL programs, as well as continually working repair bids. She trains employees on an application called Golden Eagle and assists end users. She says that she enjoys new areas to learn, and she, quote, is always looking for new challenges or to try and to simplify a process. And our last panelist today will be Brady Thompson of the Bechtel Plant Machinery. He is an accomplished senior data scientist and information architect with experience in data analysis, machine learning, and IT architecture. At Bechtel, he is designing scalable data-driven systems. He also leads enterprise-wide initiatives and represents Bechtel Plant Machinery as their estimating subject matter expert, as well as mentoring data science and engineering teams. He has a strong business and background in business intelligence and supply chain analytics from previous roles at Dick's Sporting Goods. He's got a master's in quality and manufacturing management at Penn State and is currently attending the Naval Postgraduate School for certificate in estimating and analytics. All right, so let's get started today. The opening question that I'm going to pose to the opening subject we're going to start with is motivation. And what is it that motivates early career employees? And how's that maybe different from those of us who have been around the block a little bit? So I'm going to start by, I'm going to ask each panelist to give me a one-sentence answer to this question. And then we'll circle back around. So, okay. So the question is, what makes cost analysis exciting to you in one sentence? All right, we'll start with Jacqueline.
Hi. So I would say that every day is a challenge and it never gets boring.
All right. Okay, Brady.
Hi, I would say trying to solve a puzzle that you know you will never be 100% correct at.
All right. Sam.
Always learning something new. Every day is different.
All right, and Michael.
Yeah, I kind of parroting everybody else. It's the puzzles behind it when you're trying to estimate something new, and then you never know what you're going to walk into every day.
All right. Okay. So let's kind of circle around on that a little bit. So Jacqueline, you said that that's what you like about what motivates you is, or what makes it exciting to you is that it never gets boring. So is that unique to pricers or across the field?
I think it's unique to Pricer. So there's a bunch of different variants that go into it, from the customer to the bid that you're proposing to what they're requesting. And even sometimes is, if you have the same program from year to year, they might have new requirements the next year. So it's always a fun challenge to figure out what they want and what they're expecting.
Okay. Brady, your answer was that it's the challenge of trying to solve the puzzle. So how does that work for you, especially since your background is on the data analytics side?
Yeah, from a data perspective, it's a puzzle that you never have all the pieces for either. You're either missing something. There could be a puzzle that could be underneath the couch that you're not sure of yet, that's discovered later. And it's trying to get the biggest representation or the best you can do with what you have at the time. And when it comes to the data standpoint, I think that's super important because it's use all of the data that you have to kind of get that best answer and hopefully give that first estimate itself.
Sam, you talked about learning something new.
Always. I'm going to kind of go off of Brady's answer a little bit. So it's that puzzle, right? That you have to go and figure out something maybe we haven't done before. Those to me are the most interesting ones. And so you're trying to find the puzzle, and inevitably the puzzle piece is some person in some obscure role, like 20 teams away from you. And you finally find this person and they have like a whole plethora of knowledge and you learn so much. It's like information download all at once. And I always find those moments to be the most fascinating.
Okay, Michael, you want to give a shot at it? Oh, you're on mute.
Good catch there. Yeah, what really worked for me when I got into the cost estimating role is having completed my master's before I entered the workforce. I knew I didn't want to spend my 20s in a library just studying the theoretical side of math. So I traded the library for a cubicle. I don't know how well that did for me, but it was seeing how math is applied in the workplace and all the different places that we could use our numerical analysis to help solve problems in the workforce. And now it's kind of grown from just doing estimating to I've recently transitioned into a more finance role where I could use my estimating knowledge to help those practices and processes they have become more automated, more or less manual. And it's just all of this goes back to that basis of mathematics that I love, and I get to use it to make everybody's jobs easier.
All right, so let me ask you guys. So the theme here seems to be that it's the challenge of solving something, and that's really what makes the role exciting to you. So let me ask you, is that what motivates you? Is that what brings you into the office every day? Or maybe you don't go into the office anymore. I can't say that. That at least gets you online every day, keeps you showing up. What's your favorite part of the job, and what's your least favorite part of the job? So I'll start with Jacqueline.
Well, excuse me, my favorite part of the job is learning something new all the time. Like everybody keeps talking about, it's all the puzzle pieces, and it's when you find that particular person that you're looking for, that one valid piece of information, and then it's like, boom, all these light bulbs go off, everything's in your mind fresh, and you're able to proceed forward. I love that we have the exposure to talk to other groups for them to help us and lend their hands. Maybe we don't know something, so they help us learn, and same thing for them. We help them learn as well. One of the downfalls I do find is everything is different. Nothing's the same. So you're never gonna repeat what you're really doing. So as much as pricing, we price something up and great, we're getting it out the door, but there's so many different versions and variants and puzzle pieces that go into that before it's even out the door. There's no rhyme or rhythm. Every day is different. And I think that's the exciting part, right? So you're not going into the office doing the same exact thing all the time. And that's something I used to do in my prior career. It was kind of every day, and it gets very, very mundane. And this is super exciting to me. It's very different every day and exciting and challenging. And that's the great part. Like it challenges me, right? So I don't like to be bored. So having the challenges every day, and it's always a different challenge, and it's several of them, but it's great.
Okay, Brady, what about you? What's the favorite part of your job, and what's your least favorite part?
Sure. So in my bio, I mentioned information architecture, and we talked about that person that's 3 aisles down that you never talk to, that's holding a piece of knowledge that's going to impact the whole estimate. We talked about a puzzle piece that's sitting underneath a couch. How can I implement a system that enables me to find that lost puzzle piece, that data table that I'm missing? How can I take that response from that older person that has tons of experience, and how can I expose that to estimators themselves? So my favorite part of my kind of position in estimating is coming up with, we'll say, digital solutions that actually get estimators to do what they need to do. So really understanding how to create the estimate, how to build that bottoms up parametric estimating, and then take in the actual system, and how can I introduce new tools like ChatGPT, or like that we hear those fun AI tools, and actually put that in a government system, and then get my estimators to perform the best quality estimate they can. So that challenge specifically to me is my favorite part. I'll say my least part is the red tape. I think we can all smile and nod our heads as we understand the red tape we go through, how hard or long it may take us to do some things, or just we simply can't because we're in a certain government device. And not sure how we get better there, but excited to keep learning and figuring it out.
Okay, Sam?
So my most favorite is getting to, like I said, it's the learning something new. It really is getting to talk with people who've been doing this for a long time, getting that information, download the different perspectives that can be added to it, the historical, the political climates, as well as the digital transformation efforts. I really do find a strong interest in that. I like seeing something that is a repeatable process and being able to make it go quicker so that we are saving time and utilizing the softwares that are out there. My least favorite, it's going to be tied between two things. It's reviewing people's works. Part of my role sometimes is going and checking other people for compliance, and I ultimately didn't go into accounting for a reason. It's reviewing other people's work, just it gets a little mundane, right? And then the other part is those projects that keep dragging. It's like we need to refresh something for negotiations. We need to do something like that. And it's like, oh, here's this project again. Oh, it's coming back again. 8 iterations later, maybe 3 years down the road, it'll eventually get settled. And it just gets a little, that kind of repetitive process where it seems like limited gains get a little tiresome.
All right, Michael, what about you? What's your favorite part and your least favorite part?
My two favorites would be when I get to go into work and just sit with my cost models and keep building on it and building new features and adding something new to it that's going to be useful for the proposal phase. And then also like working with the newer people on the team, getting to show them what I've done, but then also take their input, make it better, and then they learn and I learn. That part's great. My least favorite part is workplace politics. I've never been good at that. I'd say the best I've done in my career is when I did supplier cost analysis and I got to go to negotiations because I got to play the part of the bad cop. That's just what I'm good at. When I have to be more professional and be more politically correct, I tend to struggle, especially because what we do involves data. And when people want to tell me it's not what the data says, when it is what the data says, I don't mix well with that. It's like the numbers don't lie.
All right. Okay, let me run through the panel and ask you, is there anyone that inspires you? It could be, it could be personal, it could be, someone, your mentor, it could be, I don't know, anybody. So is anybody want to raise their hand and tell me who inspires them? That's not a quick answer there, is it? All right.
Mine's easy.
Okay.
Yeah, I could hop in there. My dad is what inspired me to get into math. I was homeschooled growing up, so my mom did everything else with us, but my dad taught us math. More often than not, when we were younger, it reduced us to tears. Like he liked to call it fun math, and there was nothing fun about it. But as I got older, I learned to appreciate just his skills with numbers. And he did more finance accounting compared to what I do in estimating. But I remember long car rides with him. He would just be explaining numbers to me and how they work and like how he could do big math problems in his head. And then throughout high school and college, he's the one who pushed me towards getting my degree in mathematics. And then, I grew to love it. And now it's what pays the bills. So like without him as a role model, I wouldn't have made it nearly as far.
Okay. Anyone else want to volunteer? Who inspires them? All right, Sam.
Okay. You might not love my answer though, because it's going to embarrass you. So for those who don't know, I understudy to Brent, and I have been through a lot of different mentors in my life, and I've always had a passion for math, and there are several people who fed into that. But getting to work with Brent has been the most amazing opportunity of my career, very easily. He brings a very unique perspective to the role. He always has ethics at the front, but then he also keeps that political, factual, you talked about, Michael, the data, sticking with the data, but understanding like the political and historical references behind it. He will be like, well, 20 years ago on this date, this is how it happened and this is how it played out. So we need to be ready for that scenario. And having that type of forethought and experience has just been an invaluable way to learn.
Thank you, Sam.
And you did not pay me for that answer,
yeah,
right?
my boss is listening to this.
Oh, is he on here?
Yeah. I don't know, but I hope he is. All right. Thank you, Sam. Anyone else want to? Okay, Jacqueline.
So it might be a little bit corny, but I will say it. My boss is actually someone who inspires me. So not only is she a woman in power, she is highly intelligent from work to outside social skills, everything. So when we're working on our data, just like Megan and just like Michael and Sam had said, it's one thing to process everything, but once you come down to the data and the numbers, that's what you can't change the numbers, right? And that's what she's very adamant about. So she'll walk everybody maybe through A and B, but if you're not landing at D for the numbers, well, we can't change that for you. There's only so much we could do about our data, right? The data is the data. You can't change that. But it's nice to see her take the time and patience and efforts to share her thoughts and her ideas, her different perspectives to work through different scenarios or different challenges that are posed. So not only does she help the pricing group, but she also is able to help all the other groups through any pricing questions. Sometimes she answers delivery questions. She's just like a plethora of knowledge. So I enjoy working with her all the time, and I enjoy everything that any kind of information she passes down onto me. She's been in this business a long time, and I really do take what she says, you know, to the heart, because I don't know who else better to learn from than her.
Okay. Brady, anyone who inspires you?
Yeah, I took this as not one person, but my I'd say core group of friends is I surround myself with people kind of in the similar career development in the same place as life. And this is very unique because some are people are moving into management, some people are moving into investments and other places that you compare yourself to health in a healthy manner and that you want to compete with, but in a good way. So each and every day, my friends and us, we're talking about what we're doing in work, what our struggles are, and also in the same place to make ourselves be better. So every day I feel like I'm inspired to kind of, I'm not say healthy compete with my friends, but also work with them to just be a better professional.
Okay. All right, we're going to move to the next topic, which is learning and advancement and how that's accomplished. So obviously, I think all of us know that there's a big challenge in the industry overall. There's a demographics. The demographics of our business is a little peculiar. There's a lot of people who've been around a long time. Not that I know of anyone who falls in that category, but a lot of us have been around for a long time. There's a large group of newer employees who have moved in who have less than 5 years experience, and there's not a lot in between. And I think that's one of the big challenges that faces the industry. So I'd like to start by asking you, what's been the most useful way for you to learn in your career? Was it a professional development rotation? Was it, finding a mentor or self-study, or what was the most useful way for you to learn? And I'll start with Michael.
When I started in cost estimating, my goal in life was to be a teacher at the time. So I was teaching part-time at Missouri State University when I got the job at Boeing. So I had no clue about finance, never took a finance course, no clue about aerospace, anything like that, but I knew numbers. So when I started in my job in labor cost estimating and pricing, it was a traditional put together BOE and cost volume. Some of the ladies on my team that I worked with started having me peer review their proposals. So that way they could teach me about the process and everything, while also knowing, like, I don't know anything about the airplanes, but I know math, and I know if the numbers are tying out at the end, and I could go through, review the proposals. That way I'm touching the products that we put out, but also adding that value to it. And so throughout the first couple months of my career, I was peer reviewing everybody's proposals. And I mean, that's what taught me the ins and outs, what to do, what not to do.
Jacqueline, what about you? What's the most useful way you found to learn?
Honestly, by making mistakes. The only way you learn is to make mistakes, right? I mean, not so much making mistakes all the time, but those are one of the hard parts, right? So if you have a challenge that you're trying to overcome and you keep, making this hiccup and this mistake, eventually you're going to learn from it, right? And that's going to be embedded in.
Oh, I think we lost her there. We're waiting for her to come back on. Brady, what about you? What's the most useful way you found to learn in your career?
Yeah, so I think the statement "go figure it out" says a lot. Is kind of early in my business side of my career is I was doing estimates in Excel, and I was like, wait, like, why can't I do this in more of an automated fashion? Like, why can't I program a learning curve into this? And what it started to show me is if I Google how to do that, and then you kind of start piecing the trails together, you start to learn new skills, start to learn new IT skills, then also programming skills that enable to do some of the jobs automatically. So I think it's a really nice thing to, like you say, go figure it out, Google it, YouTube it, but also apply it to an actual situation. So you're not just kind of arbitrarily looking into subjects, but you're trying to solve a goal.
Okay. All right, Jacqueline, you got cut off just a little bit. You were talking about the benefits of making mistakes. So
yeah, so the benefits of making mistakes is you get to learn from those mistakes, which are really great. And I apologize, can you repeat the question? Because getting kicked off totally threw me.
okay. What's the most useful way that you found to learn in your career?
So for me is also being visual, watching somebody do it and then having to repeat it. And also the peer review. So reviewing someone else's work, checking back on something prior that was previously done, kind of reading through everything, taking little notes, writing down any fun nuances that might be happening, and just kind of moving forward and applying that.
Okay. All right. Sam, what about you? What's the most useful way you found to learn in your career?
Figuring out who is closest to the topic that I need help on, and going all the way in, like finding that tree. So, picking up the phone, having a conversation. I find that when I send the emails, it puts them in a box of what they think I want. And when I pick up that phone and start talking about the context, I get so much more appreciation for not only their role, but how it integrates with what I'm doing. And so getting that full picture, it allows me to not only see the tree, but zoom out and see it in respect with the forest, and being able to just better understand how that's going to fit together. And then I will concur with Google. Whenever I've learned Alteryx and Tableau, I did not learn those things in school at all, zero. I learned them while working at Lockheed and a little bit at my past role. And Alteryx and Tableau have some really good classes for free things. And I mean, a lot of it is free. And that, and just Googling, like you get to that really specific issue and find creative ways of wording it in Google to get your weird workaround that you're out there. So those have been very valuable.
All right. So let me ask, what's the biggest challenge that you guys have had to becoming more knowledgeable? And specifically, as an add-on to that, what is it that we as the older professionals, what can we do to help you? I mean, what's our role in helping you become better analysts and better estimators? Michael?
Yeah, the biggest issue I came across, and I still hear it now, even 10 years into my career, is people didn't want to train the new hires because we're cheaper labor and we're going to replace their jobs, and layoffs will come and the older people get laid off, and then, we're the cheap labor. So no one wanted to train us. And that St. Louis, we had a rotation program of 150 kids within, the first 2 to 3 years of their career that are going through that issue. So if you're working a job, and especially where I was at, I had just left a very intense math program. Now I'm in a place where, for a couple of weeks, I felt like I wasn't learning. I was like, oh my God, I'm getting dumber every day. I'm never going to advance my career. Well, that's when I was looking at other opportunities, right? So that was the most difficult thing I came across, is just people wanting to hold that knowledge close to them out of self-preservation. And then that's where, like I was saying, the peer reviews came into play, because I was able to show them that, hey, I might be new, I might be kind of dumb still, but I could help you. And I'm here to help. I'm not here to take your job.
And so your advice to older professionals would be, don't worry, we're not here to take your jobs. That's kind of,
yeah,
that's kind
for
of
the most
message
part.
you would send.
I mean, I'm not. Some other people might be, but I'm
Right.
not. But yeah, now I could take that with me, that I was like, well, how did I feel 10 years ago when a new person's on my team, right? I don't want anybody to ever feel like that. So
Right. Okay. Jacqueline, what about you? What's the biggest challenge that you've had in becoming more knowledgeable, and how can we help?
So I think one of those is, the people have been there for so long that they hold all the information. None of the information is really written down or kind of put anywhere. It's just with them. So one of the struggles I had when I was learning is, as much as I was kind of doing the hands-on work, it was just a very small line, and it was just a very small blurb. It's like, here, do this, but there was no like why, and if this happens, then we're going to do X, Y, and Z. So my hiccup was not knowing all the weird nuances that somebody might not have written down, or it's that one-off special case where they have to do a certain formula, or sorry so they have to give us the weird little nuances that are hangups, right? And it's good for them to tell us what we're doing wrong, but I think it's also beneficial for us to let them know how to help us work, right? How to help us proceed and get further.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I mean, I can say, as a older person in the workforce, I've spent most of my career working with people who'd been here 25, 30, 35 years, and it just, you got to a point that everybody, you didn't have to explain anything to anybody, because everybody had been there so long. They knew exactly what you were talking about. And the biggest challenge of new employees were, you had to remember, you had to learn what they didn't know, right? I mean, it's just, you just assumed everybody knows everything, right? And then obviously that's not the case. Brady, what about you? What's the biggest challenge that you've had in becoming more knowledgeable, and how can we help?
So I would say more process oriented. So say I go learn something brand new and I'm excited to bring it back to a company. You immediately hit the wall of, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've been doing it the same way. It works perfectly. I'm accurate, but I've been doing it for 30 years. And it's, how do you get past that to introduce something new into a company that makes it beneficial for the bigger picture? And that might be, instead of just typing it in Excel, like that big complex notebook, enter it here that looks just like Excel, but now I can actually use technology to expose that data to my workforce or to future estimates. So it's, how do you understand change management and meet people in their place with like the balance of trying to introduce something new or something brand new into a company?
Okay. Sam, what about you? What's the biggest challenge that you've had in becoming more knowledgeable?
I would say mainly when I first started, it was gaining people's trust. Some people have been doing the same thing for so many years, and this is their piece of that puzzle. And they want you to learn, but golly, to hand it over to you and you make a mistake on something that's been their baby for 20 years, that's like just crushing, right? But I think, it's Jacqueline that brought up the point, like, we have to make the mistakes to be able to learn. And so maybe just having that extra, if you're really concerned about that trust, having an extra review process or something. But I would say to an older generation, that was the big hang up. Like, it took me a while to be able to like kick out my own stuff, so to speak, and like get work that was regularly mine, just because it
Right.
was so hard for people to trust somebody who didn't come in with a Department of Defense type knowledge. So it also can be a very intimidating environment when you're the least experienced in the room. Like, you want to contribute, but trying to figure out the best moment to speak, or when you have something to say that will actually be beneficial. So sometimes I think a lot of us sit there quietly because we're afraid to mess up, because we're surrounded on, whether it be the customer side, internal, we are surrounded by people with so much experience.
Okay. All right. Let's jump over to our next topic, and talking about communication and barriers to training. So let me ask, and I kind of switch with the order here. So I'll start with Sam. So what what are the hard skills or soft skills that somebody in this field needs to have, and what's the best way to get them, and how did you acquire them?
So I would say hard skills, having some sort of analytical background would be helpful, whether that be gained through education or maybe naturally possessing it. I think everybody can get there just maybe in their own way, but having some sort of analytical background. The soft skills, high attention to detail, I think really does help, because some of what we do is so complex. You make a minor mistake on a formula way back here, you've screwed up your answer on the far end, right? So having that high attention to detail is beneficial and necessary, I would say. And then critical thinking. There are just so many little nuances you have to keep in mind. I mean, how did somebody get to a particular type of rate, or how is something factored a certain way? Is this truly a correlation or causation type relationship, and making sure you're very, very conscious of those type of things. So that critical thinking skill helps. And I think the easiest way to gain some of those skills is watching others. I think I have learned the most when somebody has tried to teach me, or maybe just say, hey, here's how I'm doing something. And then you can see the moment that they hit a barrier and how they think through it. And I think teaching people how to think through something is one of the most valuable skills somebody can have. Because when we run across those mistakes in the future, we at least know how to go through and troubleshoot them. I think Jacqueline actually said something like that in the training documentation, right? Sometimes there's those nice black and white step-by-step directions, and other times it's, well, it's not working like that today. What now? So learning how to be able to troubleshoot those is very helpful.
Okay. Michael, what kind of soft skills and hard skills do people need in this field, and how do you get them?
Maybe I'm not the person to go to for soft skills, since I was the bad cop. Something I'm working on every day is being patient. The hard skills, yeah, it's the critical thinking skills that in our role, you can't write out every single step. You're going to run into something that no one's ever seen before. And it takes a specific type of person to think like, okay, just because the answer is not here doesn't mean I can't go find it on my own, right? So that it's that critical thinking skill of like, what do I have in my toolbox that I could use to maybe solve this and get it to the next step, or at least get it to a point where, you know, maybe someone else could come in and they have the answer. But it's being able to tackle those tough problems. And I think part of it is just trial and error. I think it was Samantha or Jacqueline, one of them mentioned about making mistakes. Jacqueline mentioned that. It's like one of our newer estimators was watching me the other day. She was like, well, why did you map that there? Or when we were mapping cost for our cost model, I was like, well, I don't know. I'm just going to try it out and see if it works, you know? And it's like, if it doesn't work, then I'll go back and fix it. But I have to try something. I can't just sit here and be like, well, I don't know where it goes. I guess we're done, you know? So it's getting that confidence of making the mistakes, going back and fixing them. And now you have a new tool in your box that you can pull out next time.
Okay, Brady, hard skills, soft skills, what do you need and how do you get it?
The soft skills start out listening. You're not always right. And I think that applies for anybody in the workplace. Is again, you might even be listening and now I think, okay, I know my next answer. Okay, step back, actually listen, understand what they're saying, write it down, and then come up with this collaborative solution. When it comes to more actual applied skills, I would say a coding language like C or C+. And yes, that's kind of a generic answer, but it really puts a lot of problem solving into action. It shows if, then, when. I mean, it also shows like you start to think at things as tables, arrays, and it really starts putting your thoughts into a bigger picture in a more analytical way. So if someone comes in with a coding language, it proves to me like they can critically think through a solution, write it out, not say it, but code it into something that actually creates an answer. If you take that same logic and apply it with your problem solving in day-to-day, I think that's really beneficial.
Okay, Jacqueline, what about you? Hard skills, soft skills, how'd you acquire them? What's the best way to get them?
All right. So soft skills, you know, I think that just comes in due time. From communication is like the one big thing I feel like across the board. That's like one thing that everybody needs to hone in on is communication. Listening is super big, and also asking questions, because there's always that one person that doesn't ask that one question that like everybody was thinking about and we all needed the answer to, but we were just too shy to ask, right? It's also very much a big thing to be detail oriented. You want to make sure, I think Sam had mentioned it, you know, if you make one little small minor detail, it could be a 0.2 somewhere and it will mess up your whole entire process of pricing. And then you have to start all over. And we don't like to do that. But, you know, it happens. I have fat fingers sometimes. So, you know, and the hard skills, I would definitely say, definitely having some type of analysis background, you know, when we're dealing with the data or trying to put a puzzle piece back together or even undo the puzzle to re-put it back together, having that ability to determine and make the analysis of what should be going in and what shouldn't be going in and what kind of processes we might be able to take, and even trying to shorten down the process. You know, I think those are better ideals and ways for us to kind of move forward.
All right. So my next question is communication. So we talked about different ways. Sam talked about the advantage of just picking up the phone and calling somebody. What's your preferred communication style? I mean, you're face to face, a phone call, an email, IMing somebody. What works for you? Start with Brady. You're a technology guy, so it surely can't be face to face, right?
Oh, it's absolutely face to face. I mean, I'm reading your tone through an email, and there's absolutely not a tone there. You put a smiley face in a Teams message, and that has a different meaning to me. I'm overthinking every single thing I read, or even on the phone. Like, you can't get that true interaction. Absolutely face to face.
Okay. All right, Samantha.
So mine depends. I would say calls mostly, except when I'm trying to get a concrete like GRNA type answer. And then I would love it to be an email because man, do I love to be able to file it and know why in the world I chose a GRNA for that.
All right, Jacqueline.
I'd say for myself as well, it's definitely phone calls. I think it's a lot easier and quicker just to pick up the phone and figure out, instead of sending a few different emails and then we're all circling around the rabbit court trying to figure out which way we're going. So I think it's definitely phone calls.
Okay, Michael.
It depends on the situation. If it's a one-on-one sort of thing, I'm definitely more of a face-to-face person. If it's multiple people need input, sometimes meetings aren't worth it because it takes forever to schedule something, get everybody on the ball when it could have been solved with an email.
All right. Okay, now we're gonna turn to remote working. So that's always a big topic. Those of us who spent 30 plus years coming in the office every day, we can't break the habit. At least some of us can't. So I still come in every single day. Lots of people don't, and that's the new reality of it. So let me ask the just real quick, run through the panelists real quick. What's your situation? How many of you work remotely? Do you work hybrid? Do you never come into the office? Do you come in the office every day? Start with Brady.
Hybrid, 3 days in the office.
Okay. Sam?
Like 99% work from home.
Okay.
That 1%, right?
Yeah. Michael?
I'm in the office every day.
Okay.
I work in a skiff now. I don't have a choice.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Jacqueline?
I'm hybrid, but I'm mostly remote from home.
Okay. All right. But everybody's worked in an office at one point or another in their career, correct? All right. Okay. There's some people who have not. So let's run through what's the advantages and the disadvantages of remote and or versus hybrid versus coming in every day. And that's a controversial subject. People get awful fired up about that, depending on what their feelings are. So I'll start with Jacqueline. So you know, what's the pluses and minuses for you? Do you like your situation? Obviously, what works for you?
So I think there's a huge benefit to working from home. So for me, just for my case, my job, I love it, but it's far away with, you know, no traffic or whatever. It's just an hour to get into commute, right? So I have an hour there, an hour home. So that's 2 hours. And then you're working your long day and it could just be overwhelming and a lot sometimes. Then you have to deal with your traffic and all that fun stuff. But Another thing, that's just commuting, right? Another thing in the office that I do notice when I'm there is all the background noise, everybody talking or taking meetings, people walking by, the printer going off. I, for some reason, like hear all these weird things going on behind me, and I get very distracted. And, you know, I love to talk to people. That's great. But I don't need people coming up to me every 5 seconds when I'm in office. When I'm doing something really important, it's very distracting. So when I'm home, it's very quiet, it's peaceful, I can concentrate and do my work. If I need to stop for some whatever reason, I can stop and I can come back later, right? I can be on super early if needed, I can be on super late if needed. You know, there's an adjustment. So if I need to possibly step out in the middle of the day or something happened with one of the kids, I can step away and then still come back and have the opportunity to still work. You know, maybe I'm working towards a deadline, or, you know, maybe I just need to be on for a staff call later that day, but there's room for us to put in that work. So if there is a hiccup in our day, we still have the ability to be able to finish our work, as opposed to being in the office and having to take a half a day and then you can't finish up and now you're behind in your work, stuff like that. So I do, you know, feel, for me and my self, I do feel like working from home is a super beneficial way, and it does create that work-life balance. And I'm sure we'll probably get into that later. So I'll hold my comments for that.
Okay. All right. Sam, you're a work at homer.
I'll echo a lot of what Jacqueline says. I'll summarize it to optimizes our time, right? You don't have travel time. I know several people who go and take their, like, you know, come to work early, stop, take their kids to school, or we have somebody who calls it kid Ubering on our team. Like, they'll have like little breaks in their day that they have built into their schedule, and it allows them to not miss anything. And they're also, we had somebody who used to do that before COVID happened, and we all were in an office. And what that individual used to have to do is pack up their computer and everything, rush, go get the kids, and then try and reset everything up at home. And of course, it's not quite the same work environment. And I think, you know, when we did move home and it started to look more permanent, I started optimizing my office. So now I have things set up exactly what allows me to work best. And I think that's definitely the, you know, advantage there.
Okay, Michael, you're forced to work out of the office these days, but I mean, I'm sure you've worked remote. So you got a little of both. What's in your experience? So what's your take on it?
I think I'm a little bit scarred from being homeschooled. So when I was forced to work from home, it just feels like I'm under house arrest the whole time. Like, all I want to do is leave the house if I'm told that I have to stay home. And even during COVID, when I was hybrid, it was a unique situation where I moved into a house the week that the world shut down with two people who also worked on my team. So we actually became more efficient, but it was much more of a consolidated office. Had I not been in that situation, I would have been miserable. Again, that's just me. It's how I operate. But now that I'm on this new team, I've been going through a giant proposal I'm putting together. And now that everybody that I work with is forced to go into the office, things are so much more efficient. And if I need an input, or someone needs to update their input, or we need to have a quick tag up, you just walk over to someone's cube and get it done. I know Jacqueline, that, you know, talked about how that could be disrupting to a work day, but in some instances, it takes a lot of time out of, like, trying to schedule meetings when you know, you're trying to look for a slot on someone's calendar instead of just peeking your head over a cube wall.
Brady?
Yeah, so I would say my answer is completely opposite of Michael's. Is if I'm forced to be in that office, I'm already cranky, I'm mad, I had to drive, I had to go buy Starbucks, and now I'm sitting in an office all day where I'm not comfortable. If I'm home, I enjoy work. I love what I do, that I can just work, do my thing, even in the evening, sit on the couch and finish a project. Like, I just feel more natural at what I'm doing. Also, like, the ability to kind of like travel and so on. So wake up, take the RV a few hours, then actually go work and get work done, and then live the rest of your life. I really like the hybrid or even work from home 100% approach, because it really lets you kind of combine work and life together. Even if I had the chance, if like my current job, if I could move to something that's more 100% remote, I would absolutely do it doing the job I'm doing. So I absolutely think work from home is the future.
Okay. Now let's talk about one of the downsides of it. It was a few months ago. I was in a meeting where one of the engineering vice presidents here talked about the challenges of having a remote workforce, and she said one of the things that was most difficult was that in her career, how much she had she phrased it as learned by eavesdropping. So just sitting in a cubicle, hearing people around you talk about a problem, and you just learn from that, just that just hearing people. And obviously when you're at home, the only thing you're going to hear is the dog, the cat, the kids, the neighbors, whatever. I mean, you kind of miss out on that. So how do you compensate for that? I mean, what do you do that makes up for that, especially in terms of learning transfer? That's really what I think I'm driving at. So Brady, you're definitely on the pro work from home, but do you find that to be challenging?
Yeah, and I think it's a big cultural shift, but also maybe a generational gap here is people are so used to being in person or like, oh, I'm working from home, don't call me or don't Teams me. Like, no, I'm working. Like, if you want to solve something together, let 5 people get on a Teams call, turn your cameras on, and start to solve a problem together. Because then you can actually start having some of those interaction or like that type of feeling, but you're virtual. It's really when you start to see the workforce. I'll be in the office tomorrow. Just set up all my meetings tomorrow. Or, oh, I'll stop over in your cube tomorrow. I'm like, no, call me right now.
All right, Jacqueline, what are some, how do you overcome that difficulty, that challenge of how do you learning transfer in a remote environment?
So I guess one of the challenges there is the same thing. Whether I'm in the office or at home, it's the same thing. We could still pick up the phone. We could still have a Teams. It's literally the same thing. There's no difference. I mean, sure, you can pop down in my office. That's great. But I feel like Teams and phone calls can do just the same thing as if we're at a conference meeting. But I do like your point where you are in the office and you do hear that background noise and you're eavesdropping. So I will attest that is a good point for being in the office, right? You do get to hear that background information and kind of get to absorb it as you're there. So I do think that is good. But I believe Brady mentioned, maybe it's a generational gap and whatnot. I feel like I kind of have a little bit of both, right? Because when I started in my workforce, I was always in the office, right? And now we're in a little bit of a different workforce where everybody might be hybrid or whatnot. And through the years, even when I was a lot younger and always going into the office, I was always in finance. So to me, in my head, I always said, I could do this from home. Like, why can't I work from home? And it always bothered me that I have to go into the office when I could just be in the Bahamas vacationing. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't be in the Bahamas, but if I could be, in Utah doing my work, and it's no different as if I'm in the office is my point. So, I think either way, whether you're at home or in the office, as long as all your work is getting done and you're being super productive, it's when you're not productive, I think, is the real issue.
Okay. Sam?
So on a personal note, for me, a disadvantage, I have a 3-year-old and my husband watches her during the day, but trying to make a 3-year-old understand I'm at work, about the only way I can is to shut the door so that there's a physical barrier. And every now and then I'll hear the little knock that comes on the door. So trying to get kids, I think, to understand that barrier, or even sometimes, love my husband to death, but sometimes spouses, right? They think they're just popping in for a quick question, almost like the cubicle scenario, right? Coworkers, it's like, no, I'm working. Oh yeah, right. And, ventures back off. But I don't think it's that big of a deterrent. It's, to me, I just set those boundaries and barriers where my office is my office. The biggest disadvantage for me has been losing body language, because for the most part, people don't turn on cameras. And I used to be a teacher. I feed a lot off of people's body language and understanding if I'm teaching somebody how they're responding to me, or just the way that somebody presents something. There's so much to be gained with the way that they say it, and that context that's presented. So I do think that would be helpful for people who used cameras. And then some training really is easier in person. So there was something pretty recent where I was working with somebody and I was actually at the office and they had to map out what we were doing, and having that little handwritten quick diagram made it go a lot quicker, I think, than trying to do something on a whiteboard through Teams.
Michael?
I'm gonna be my bad cop self again, have the contrarian side of me come out versus what everybody else is talking about. I think an advantage for a lot of us on the call right now is, even though we're newer, we're still 10 years into our career, and a lot of us had that experience in the office where we got to build our networks before we moved home. So for us, it's a lot easier to pick up the phone and call someone when we've had those face-to-face interactions with someone first. If I'm blowing up some engineer's phone trying to get inputs and we've never met, that situation is a lot different versus if I've been in the office with him for a while and we've met, we've talked, we've had small talk. Now, if I need something from him or he needs something from me, it goes a lot easier. And then, yeah, if I take that and now I'm working from home, well, I still have that connection. And I think where, a lot of this conversation is revolving around like generational gaps and all that. I think what a lot of the younger people in our workplace are missing is a network. And when you're on the other side of the screen and not taking those times to have like actual personal conversations with someone and it's all business, you're not building that network. And I know for a fact I would not be at the position I am within Boeing 10 years later, had it not been for my own personal network. And kind of just a short story on top of that, like I mentioned, I moved into a house with some coworkers. One of them was an office mate. And then another guy moved in with us. We called it the Boeing frat house. It was a wild time. But he moved in with us and he worked virtual 100% of the time. And he didn't want to come work for Boeing because it wasn't cool. It wasn't the sexy job to do. He liked his remote. But then he sees me and Karen and Gunnar hanging out. He's like, man, where do you guys find each other? That's so cool that you have a friendship. And there was one day we all took off and went to the baseball game together. And he was like, oh, I want coworkers to do that with. And it's like, well, we met at the office. That isn't cool or sexy, but now it's what you're telling me you want. So there's got to be, some midway point there that people on both sides need to be willing to reach.
All right. We are almost on the hour here, so I want to thank our panelists for a great session today. These great answers to the questions. So I'll hand it back over to Kevin to wrap up.
Thank you very much, Brent, and thank you to all of our panelists taking the time today to do this. I appreciate it. There's a lot of really good commentary today, and to all of you out there in the audience, if you enjoyed this, if you got something from it, we try to do periodic webinars throughout the year, and obviously during the workshop in the springtime, we have an event. If you would like to know more, please, I encourage you to check out the ICEAA website. We've got all of our information as well as our previous webinars and recordings thereof on there. And if you would like to reach out more directly, you can always email at ICEAA, ICEAA at ICEAAonline.org. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day.